Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day that you've given us, Lord. We thank you for the opportunity to be in your house today, Lord. Pray that you guide and direct in Sunday school lessons to come, Lord, in the different age groups and such. Pray that you'd give wisdom and understanding for the things of your word today, Lord. And pray all these things in Christ's name. Amen. All right, so Isaiah chapter 7 is where we're going to be starting. Isaiah chapter 7. So, while you turn there. So far we've covered several things in Genesis, going from creation, spending a lot of time on that, going through the flood. We just wrapped up with the flood pretty much last week. As we're looking towards Christmas now, today we have our Christmas themed service, so we'll be talking a little bit Christmassy stuff today. And as we continue to progress through Genesis in the coming weeks, you will see a pattern. And I hope through today's lesson, you'll also see that pattern, is that the perceived degree of difficulty in a situation is not a problem for God. All right, I'll say that again. A perceived degree of difficulty is not a problem for God. So hopefully we'll take a look at Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14, and we'll start there today. Wife, if you'd read that for us, please.
Therefore the Lord shall give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel.
All right, very good. So we don't get much more Christmassy than that, right? Christmas prophecy in Isaiah, right? What did we learn here in that first sentence? Who is doing this work? The Lord himself, right? Capital L-O-R-D. Jehovah himself is doing this. Now, if you remember, as we discussed we went through Noah, who gave Noah the plans for the boat? Who protected Noah in the ark? Who brought all the animals to Noah? Who did the rain? Who did all that? The Lord himself did it, right? And we'll see a pattern here as well. The Lord himself will give you a sign, right? And what is that sign? It's right there. What is that sign? Virgin, right? Because that happens all the time, right? That's common back in the day, right? No, right? Sarcasm, okay? And then what will his name be? Emmanuel, right? So just in case you needed more details, there you go. There's the name right there, okay? So when was Isaiah written in comparison to the birth of Christ? Peter, you know. Approximately how many hundreds of years? About 700 years, right? So 700 years before the birth of Christ, Isaiah prophesied this, okay? 700 years. So it's like right around the corner. Okay, so he saw it coming, and there it was, and poof, right away it happened. No, there's time, right? 700 years before the birth of Christ, God called his shot and said, this is how it's going to happen. Okay? We all know then, if we flip to, you'll probably want to keep something in Isaiah. We'll be back there. Isaiah chapter 1. What did I just say? Matthew chapter 1. We'll be back in Isaiah in a little bit, but Matthew chapter 1, verses 22 through 25. Matthew chapter 1, verses 22 through 25. And it says, now all this was done, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, behold, a virgin shall be with child, and shall bring forth a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel. That sounds familiar. Which being interpreted is God with us. Then Joseph, being raised from sleep, did as the angel of the Lord had bidden him, and took unto him his wife, and knew her not till she had brought forth her firstborn son, and he called his name Jesus. Right, okay? So in verse 22, what did we learn? What did we learn? It was done, right? It's all done, completed, fulfilled. What was fulfilled? The prophecy. Who gave the prophecy? Huh? Isaiah wrote the prophecy. Who gave the prophecy? The Lord himself. So the Lord himself gave the prophecy. Isaiah wrote it down. This is how it's going to happen. Virgin's going to be born. Emmanuel's going to be his name. Matthew flips around 700 years later. And what happens? Exactly what God said. And it is done. Who did it? God did, right? The Lord said it. The Lord did it. Okay? So, what we want to do today is reaffirm the importance of the virgin birth, okay, and answer a long pondered question concerning Joseph. Right? So that's where we'll be going in our epic journey today. But there's some groundwork that's got to be laid, so hopefully we'll get to that right now. 2 Samuel chapter 7. 2 Samuel chapter 7. So this is going to be one of those puzzle lessons where a piece is going to fit together and a piece is going to fit together. And at the end, hopefully the refrigerator door light will go on and you'll be like, ah, there you go. Right? 2 Samuel chapter 7. So just to set the context here, this is the chapter where David is looking to build the temple. He's talking with Nathan and Nathan goes, yeah, that's a good idea. And then God sends Nathan back to David and goes, nah, that's not for you, man. Right? Okay, so that's what's happening here. So, if we take a look at verse 5, chapter 7, verse 5. Rick, could you read that for us, please?
Go and tell my servant David, thus saith the Lord, shalt thou build me a house for me to dwell in.
Okay, so who is speaking here? Right? Thus saith the Lord. Capital Lord. Let's jump down to verse 8. Right? Clint, can you read that for us?
Now therefore, so shalt thou say unto my servant David, thus saith the Lord of hosts, I took thee from the sheepcote, from following the sheep, to be ruler over my people, over Israel.
Okay, so Clint, who is speaking here? Very good. Verse 11. Mark, can you read that for us, please?
And as since the time that I commanded judges to be over my people Israel, and have caused thee to rest from all thine enemies, also the Lord telleth that he will make thee an house.
All right, so and who is speaking here in verse 11? Just in case anybody's missed it. The Lord, right? So in 3 verses, the Lord is speaking and is saying and reiterating who is speaking this. Thus saith the Lord. 1, 2, 3 times. Okay? Now, what is the Lord saying? Let's take a look at verse 12 and 13. Verse 12 says, And when thy days be fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, I will set up thy seed after thee, which shall proceed out of thy bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build an house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. All right, so what's happening in verses 12 and 13? All right, more details. What is the Lord saying? Okay, so the establishment of whose kingdom? David's kingdom. Okay, for how long? That's a long time. Okay, and that's reiterated in verse 13, his kingdom forever, right? Okay, very good. So we understand that the Lord is saying this, much like in Isaiah chapter 7, where the Lord spoke this prophecy there, in verses 5, 8, and 11, thus saith the Lord. And what is he saying? That David's kingdom will be established forever, which is a long time. All right. So, Isaiah then. Isaiah chapter 9. I haven't lost anybody yet. We're all there. It's all good. All right. We'll get you lost yet, Randy. You just wait. Hold on as long as you can, and then we'll drop you off somewhere in the weeds. Okay, very good. Isaiah chapter 9, verses 6 and 7. Bob, could you read that for us, please?
Unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end, upon thy throne of David, and upon his kingdom, to order it and to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth, even forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this.
All right, very good. So, verse 6, common Christmas verse, right? We know this verse. Well, what is this verse prophesying about? Who is this verse prophesying about? Right? Isaiah prophesying about Christ. So Christ is being prophesied here, right? And who is Christ tied to? He's tied to David, right? Very good. Okay. So verse 7 tells us that upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom to order it and establish it with judgment and justice from henceforth, even forever. Who is doing this work? Who is tying Christ in with David? The Lord himself, right? He even says the zeal of the Lord might make it happen. Will, right? Will establish, where'd it go? Yep, there it is. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. So there's no question there, is there? Right? Who's saying this? God is saying this, and he's saying, oh yeah, I'm going to do it. Right? It doesn't matter how hard you think it is. Guess what? I'm going to do it. Right? And we got stuck at the virgin birth part, and we're like, oh yeah, that's, that's a nice trick. Okay? But he's saying, that's not a problem. Don't worry about that. Okay? So Isaiah 700 before chapter 11. Chapter 11, verse 1. Let's see. Shirley, can you read that for us?
And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of its root.
All right, so here again in chapter 11, verse 1, we have Christ and David being tied together again, just in case we forgot since chapter 9. All right, so take a look then at Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 23. Jeremiah chapter 23. Now, is Isaiah the same as Jeremiah? Randy comes up with a no. Good job, Randy. No, those are different people, right? Okay. There you go. So, when was Jeremiah written? Around 625 BC, something like that. So he's like in the 600 before Christ. So you have Isaiah about 100 years before, 75 to 100, depending on how you want to do math, right? Okay, so Jeremiah chapter 23, verse 5 and 6. Jeremiah 23, verse 5 and 6. It says, Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will raise unto David a righteous branch, and a king shall reign and prosper, and shall execute judgment and justice in the earth. In his days Judah shall be saved, and Israel shall dwell safely. And this is his name whereby he shall be called the Lord our righteousness. So again, in Jeremiah, 75 years at least after Isaiah, right, is prophesying and connecting again Christ and David together, right? And also then prophesying about Christ himself, the Lord our righteousness, all right? So, do we understand so far that the Lord is saying all this? The Lord is the one that's going to do it, and he is the one that is connecting Christ into the line of David. Right? We all see that. Right? Very good. We all know Christmas. We know that stuff. All right, very good. All right. So, Psalm 132. Psalm 132. Psalm 132. Psalm 132. There we go. Psalm 132, verse 11. Dennis, can you read that for us, please? Correct. All right, very good. So this is David writing here, and he's writing about the promise that God gave him in 2 Samuel, right? And who did David say told him this? Where did this promise come from? The Lord himself, right? So David is writing about what the Lord said through Nathan to him in 2 Samuel, and he's saying, the Lord hath sworn. Right? The Lord has sworn in his truth. Okay? That's what's going on there. And he's not going to turn from it. So what does that mean? There's a chance then that it might not happen. Nope. Good job, Bob. Right? No, there's no chance it's not going to happen, right? The Lord hath sworn. He hath sworn and will perform it. All right, so now as we remember from studying Noah, right, one of the reasons with the flood was the corruption of the line of, the corruption of the flesh in the line of the genealogies, right? So that's one of the reasons everything got wiped out, started over, right? So we know that there are issues, or can be issues, right, in the pureness and the righteousness of the lines from Noah, David, going out to Christ, right? So we already know there's some complications that could arise there that God is going to take care of, obviously, in having this, in protecting that, okay? Plus, then you add the virgin birth on top of it, okay? But see, now here's where it starts to get interesting. We know that in Matthew chapter 1. So keep a finger in Psalm. We're going to come right back there in a second. So we know from Matthew chapter 1, Matthew chapter 1, verse 1. Matthew chapter 1, verse 1 says what? Sandy, you got that for us? All right, so there you go. In verse 1, it's talking about Jesus Christ. And who is Jesus Christ the son of? Down the line, not directly. David, right? Very good. And then if you take a look down in verse 6, Jesse begat David, just so there's no question about which David this is. It's David the king. And David the king begat Solomon, and so on and so forth. So in Matthew there, it proves and it shows that, yes, it did happen. Christ is connected into the line of David in Matthew chapter 1, right? So that is fulfilled. Okay? But what's interesting there is you flip back to Psalm 132. Psalm 132, verse 12. Wife, could you read that for us?
And if thy children will keep my covenant and my testimony that I shall teach them, their children shall also sit upon thy throne forevermore.
All right, very good. So this is a continuation, more details in the promise that was given. And we've heard through Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, like, look, guys, if you obey, right, if you obey the Lord, you'll be blessed in your kingdom and you'll be able to stay in Israel and all these promises, right? We're familiar with those. There's a similar promise here that's given, so that the Lord tells them, if thy children will keep my covenant and my testimony that I shall teach them, their children shall also sit upon thy throne forevermore. Okay? So there's an interesting word there. What's the interesting word? If. That is a very good word, right? There's another word I was looking at. No. No. Starts with an A. Randy? Nope, that doesn't start with an A at all. Also, right? If and also. Okay. So if and also. If thy children, then they will also sit upon the throne forever. Okay, so we know that Christ is in there, but we have these children that are involved. Okay? So we ask then, why is this a twist? Okay? Because we know these children, they didn't obey. Right? So this is a huge fail right here. Right? Now remember at the end of verse 12, their children shall also sit upon thy throne forevermore. Okay? And we know that they did not obey because they were carried off into captivity. Remember at the end of the Old Testament, off they go. Okay? Isaiah, or Jeremiah, right? Lamentations. That's what happens. So you know that they didn't do this. So there's a break here as well. Okay? What else do we got? So back to Matthew chapter 1. So we know that they didn't obey, and they were carried off into captivity. Matthew chapter 1 lists the genealogy of Joseph, the husband of Mary, as it says in verse 16. And Jacob begat Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who is called Christ, of whom is tied to Mary, not to Joseph. Okay? But what's interesting there in this genealogy is in verse 11 and 12. Right? Chuck, can you read verses 11 and 12 for us, please?
And Josias begat Jeconias and his brethren about the time they were carried away to Babylon. And after they were brought to Babylon, Jeconias begat Salathiel.
You can stop there. That's good enough. We don't care about those guys. Right? We only care about Jeconiah. Right? Because remember, Jeconiah was the last one. Oops. Right? Jeconiah, that's the one we care about. He was the one that's listed there. Jeconiah was the king of Judah. At the time, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, carried everybody away. Right? And that's what happened there. We can take a look at that in Jeremiah chapter 22. Jeremiah chapter 22. Yeah, it's okay. We don't care about him anyway. Right? So Jeremiah chapter 22, the whole story takes place in verses 24 through 30. All right, and it's the Lord, as I live, saith the Lord, as it starts off in verse 24. As I live, saith the Lord, through Coniah, which is Jeconiah, the son of Jehoiakim, right? And it goes on, and it's talking about, in verse 25, Nebuchadnezzar's going to carry you away and all that. And in verse 30, where it ends, thus, again, saith the Lord, write ye this man childless. A man shall not prosper in his days, for no man of the seed shall prosper, sitting upon the throne of David and ruling anymore in Judah. All right? So who is speaking again here? Right? So far, everything we've looked at, we have this comment, thus saith the Lord, right? The Lord is saying all this stuff. And what is the Lord saying here in verse 30? No more ruling in Judah. But if we tie that back to, right, Psalm 132, if your children obey, they'll reign forever. They didn't obey, they got kicked out, they got taken into captivity, and there's now no more ruling in Judah. Like at all, Peter? What did it say there? Yeah, very good, right? no more write ye this man childless. It's not like he's not going to have any children, right? Because it goes on to clarify what it means. It says, a man shall not prosper in his days. So any man-child that comes out of this, out of Jeconiah's line, which came from David, and is going to end up through Christ somewhere, no man there is going to rule. That's what it says. No man of his seed shall prosper, sitting upon the throne of David. Right? So this line, from David to Jeconiah down to Christ, we have a seed problem now. Right? Nobody in this line is going to be able to sit on the throne. Okay? Everybody with me so far? All right, even Randy?
No, but I'm glad we have a sanctuary from all over the world out here.
All right, very good. All right, so here we go. So, no, go. Jeremiah 22, verse 30 is that end. The whole story is 24 through 30 if you want to read the whole thing. Got it? All right, very good. All right. So now, why is that important? There are three main conditions that had to be met in Christ in order to substantiate his authority or authenticity of being the Messiah. Okay? He had to be of... Okay. He had to be of the lineal line, right? So he had to be of the seed of David, just like we talked about there. He had to be of the legal line, right? So lineal line, legal line, and physical line. Those three characteristics or conditions are going to be what substantiates Christ as the Messiah in the eyes of the Jews. Okay? So he had to be in the lineal line, a lineal descendant of David, to satisfy God's promise to David back in 2 Samuel. Chuck. Oh, we'll get there. We'll get there. Hang on to it, and if I don't answer it, flag me for it. All right? Because we'll try and squeeze everything all in. Okay? So we know that he's in the lineal line because if we look at either Matthew chapter 1 or Luke chapter 3, which is Mary's line, okay, through her father, he is seen in both of those lines. And that'll be important. Okay? He had to be the legal son of Joseph, but he could not be the physical son of Joseph. All right? So, let's backtrack a little bit. So we're looking at those three things right now. Joseph, the espoused husband of Mary, was a direct descendant of David and Jeconiah. We saw that in Matthew chapter 1. Right? That's our whole lineage right there, ending in verse 16 at Joseph. We got Jeconiah in verses 11 and 12, going all the way back through David, all the way back to Abraham. Okay? So because of the male line, Joseph had inherited a legal right to the throne. Okay? He's in that kingly line. Okay? So he has inherited a legal right to the throne, but because of the curse that God put on the seed of Jeconiah, that's broken. All right? We understand so far? Okay? That's what happened there. So it's interesting then that, God has to protect the line from the corruption that happened before Noah. We got the whole virgin birth thing in there, but then he throws in this curse that he himself put there just to make things a little bit harder. Right? Okay? So that's what's going on there. Joseph had a legal right to the throne, but because of the curse, again, due to sin, right, that promise, that inheritance, which is also an interesting word, is denied. Okay? So he had inherited kingship. Okay? So now, if Jesus had been the physical son of Joseph, he would have inherited the kingship line, but he could never have claimed it because of the curse of Jeconiah. Okay? So that's where our twist comes in. So had Jesus been the physical son of Joseph, he would have fallen under the curse of Jeconiah and would have been denied kingship and recognition as the Messiah. But he needs the legal right. So he retains that legal right. He retains the legal right from Joseph, but because he's not directly of the physical line of Joseph, the curse does not apply to him. See? Okay. So in Matthew chapter 1, verse 16, it ends with Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who is called Christ. And in Matthew chapter 1, verse 25, it says, and knew her not, talking about Joseph, till she had brought forth her firstborn son, and he called his name Jesus. Okay? So Matthew shows us that Jesus was the legal son of Joseph, right? So he gets the inherited kingship there, okay? But because he is not the physical son of Joseph, that curse on the seed from Jeconiah does not apply to him, okay? Well, let's see. Christ, but not physical son. Christ. Luke chapter 3. Matthew, Mark, Luke. Bookmarks flying everywhere. Luke chapter 3. Luke chapter 3, verses 31 and 32. Bob, can you read that for us, please?
Which was the son of Meliah.
You can skip down to the second half, which was the son of Nathan.
Which was the son of Nathan, which was the son of David, which was the son of Jesse, which was the son of Obed, which was the son of Boaz, which was the son of Solomon, which was the son of Nason.
Sure, there you go. Very good. So this is Mary's line now that's being talked about, okay? And who is she a part of lineally? She's a part of David. They both are. Okay? So Christ is tied to David through both Mary and Joseph. Most importantly, Mary, right? Legally through Joseph. So he inherits the kingship. And then physically by God and by Mary. Okay? So, because of the two lines blending, Mary and Joseph, because of the extra twist of the curse, right? Because of the promise to David, because of the promise in Isaiah, right, in the virgin birth, all three conditions then are met, right? So as we look at our lives, right, and it's easy to say when it's somebody else, right? Oh, don't worry, God will work it out. Oh, don't worry, God will take care of it. God will supply. God will. You can just leave it there, right? The perceived degree of difficulty in fulfilling one of these promises right? We look at the virgin birth and we see the virgin birth and its implications in salvation. And yes, that's there. And maybe we'll talk about that another time, right? But just the virgin birth is hard enough, right? Then you nail down a line. And from before the flood with Noah, we knew that was hard enough. And then you cut off one of the sides it could come from. You did it yourself. He was like, well, I don't know if the virgin birth is hard enough, right? How do we make this more amazing? Well, let's cut off one of the lines here, right? But we still need him. The only way then that this will work is through the virgin birth, all right? Fulfilling the lineal line, fulfilling the legal line, and fulfilling the physical line. Let's see. What's interesting then is if you look at Matthew chapter 2, so he had to be of the line, he had to be legally in the line, but he could not be physically of the line, of the seed of the line. But in Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 and 2, or can we get, Peter, can you read that?
Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him.
What did the wise men know? Chuck?
They knew some of the signs that were given to Adam, were told to Adam.
Yeah,
You know, the configuration of the stars. We're going to talk about astrology here.
right.
And probably
Who are they looking for?
they're looking for, I forgot, Eric, it's like Virgo is within a certain constellation.
Oh, yeah.
And all that stuff.
Yep.
But they knew what they were looking for because the only source for that would be Adam or Enoch, maybe. You know. Where could they learn about what the signs in the sky meant?
Daniel. Yeah. Because you got to remember where they're coming from. They're from the east. That's after that. But I mean, that even so, who? Who are they looking for? King. Well, wait a minute. Do you think these wise men knew about, well, there was a curse on Jeconiah. We haven't had a king in hundreds of years. How is a king showing up now? So what are they actually looking for? Randy? Right? They're looking for the Messiah, though. That's what they're looking for. Because they know that he's the only one that's going to be able to fulfill that. Otherwise, it would have been happening, another one of those men, even Joseph, in a rebellion goes, well, wait a minute, I'm of the kingly line. What happened to me? Right? I should be there. I'm king of the Jews. Ta-da, here I am. No, that's not what happened. He knew it wasn't him. Chuck, you almost had your hand up?
We call it the Bethlehem star.
Yeah.
But I know there's an alignment, and I think it's recently happened or about to happen of certain planets, Jupiter included,
Mm-hmm.
and it's bright, and it's near the moon. That's part of what I was talking about.
Okay,
How
yeah.
it's within something.
Yeah.
And they saw that.
But they know who they were looking for because they knew the promises. They knew the curses. Right? So they know that there's a 700-year time gap there. And what are they looking for? They're looking for the Messiah. All right? One other thing that's interesting then, and I don't know, maybe some of you already know this, but one of the questions that we always have as a kid then is, okay, in the Christmas story, you've got Mary and Joseph. At the resurrection, you have Mary. One side there was two, and on side there's only one. What happened to Joseph? Peter snickers. Come on, Peter.
Speculation, because it's not in Scripture, but,
There's not speculation.
well, okay, well, anyway, usually, in Jewish tradition,
Yeah.
back in those times, the males, he's 30, and the ladies were like 15, 16. So
Sure.
he's quite a bit older. Most people just assume he passed away by that time.
Why would you assume he passed away? Let's. Okay. Right? Rick? Okay, very good. Rick went with the Randy answer. God did it. Right? Well, let's think about this. The Bible does tell us what happened to Joseph if we're paying attention. Okay? How does kingship work? It passes on. When does it pass on, Peter? At the death. So, if Joseph was alive, could Christ be king? Not legally. And one of our conditions falls. Right? So what must have happened to Joseph? He has to be dead. Somewhere between 13 and 30, Joseph dies. Now, what's another interesting twist there is that there are other brothers of Christ, right? So why are they not able to inherit the kingly line once Christ was dead? Clint.
Because Joseph is the descendant of Jeconias, they couldn't because of the curse.
Okay, okay, very good. We'll take that. What else? Christ arose. That's the story, right, Peter? Okay. Say it again. I can only get one of you at a time. Come on, Bob.
I said Christ is going to rule forever.
Okay, Christ is going to rule forever, but if you've got all these other people squirreling around, what's going on? Rick? True. Who were they conceived by? Really? Uh-oh. I need page 4. There we go. Let's take a look at Mark 13. Uh-oh, that's not right. Wife, what'd you do to me? Oh, it's Matthew 15. Matthew 13. Matthew 13. Matthew 13. There weren't enough verses in Mark. Yeah. 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 Well, we were talking about this last night. That's why. And that's when this dawned on me, because we have come up with this before. Matthew 13:55 says, "Is not this the carpenter's son?" Okay, talking about Jesus. Is not his mother called Mary? Yes. And his brethren, James and Joseph and Simon and Judas. So, what do we know about Jesus? He has siblings. Okay? We know his mother. And we know his father. Okay? We also get that information out of Mark. But then if you take a look at Acts chapter 1, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts chapter 1, verse 13. Acts chapter 1, verse 13 is where we start off. "And when they were come in, they went up into an upper room, where abode Peter and James and John and Andrew, Philip and Thomas, Bartholomew, Matthew, and James the son of Alphaeus, and Simon Zelotes, and Judas the brother of James." So we have James the son of Alphaeus, and Simon, and Judas, who's also the brother of James, the son of Alphaeus. Anybody recognize those names? Uh-huh. But who's the father? Different father. Same sons. Different father. Why does he not retain any of the legal rights? They had a different father. Not just the Holy Ghost, right? But they had a completely different father and could claim none of those rights. That's why there's no competition after the fact. Jesus is dead. I'm king. No, nothing. There's none of that, right? It's another interesting twist. The Bible is an amazing book. The Bible is an amazing book. The way it just little gold nuggets. I don't know. It's just amazing. It fascinates me to no end. Peter.
I'm not sure if they're the same guys because his brother did not believe on him. So I think these may be guys that have the same name.
His brethren did believe on him. I mean, who's James?
Well, later after the resurrection, I believe that James, yes, but I don't know these guys. Listen, I don't think his apostles included his stepbrothers. I may be wrong.
That's fine. That's fine. We'll go. That's fine.
So do we have any indication that Mary was widowed and married Alphaeus?
I do not have a certificate, no. I'm sorry.
That's the speculation.
But that is the speculation, is that Mary was remarried sometime after the birth, or after the death of Joseph, after the age of 13. But yet young enough to where she had kids that were old enough to still follow Jesus.
One issue I have with that is Jesus' instructions to John regarding his mother.
Yeah,
Because that would make Alphaeus dead too.
exactly. Oh, you don't think two people died? Here's the interesting trick, though. That's fine, but what about the other three brothers? We go with the. Just think about this for 1 second, right? We get hung up on the possibility that how could two people have died? You had a virgin birth. Just saying. So let's not get too caught up in the small stuff. Yes, could they be different people? Either way, Joseph is dead, right? Either way, the brothers don't have a claim to the line at all, right? And all this is true, right? Whether you believe the line Alphaeus is involved or not, it doesn't really matter. It's an interesting twist. But go ahead.
One thing that makes sense about what you suggest is, okay, Joseph knew Mary, but they had no more children. And all
That's not necessarily true either, but go ahead.
this, if that were the case, there'd be nobody who has any kind of claim that came from Alphaeus. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If all of his brethren and sisters are step-brethren,
Yeah. See, that's the trick we don't know about is the sisters. I mean, Joseph could have had sisters. We don't know. Or not sisters, daughters. Girls, whatever. Right? But yeah, it totally kills the claim. It only leaves it at Christ, and now you have to deal with Christ, which is the problem that the world has. Now you have to deal with Christ. Right? Peter. 10 seconds, Peter. Yeah.
Remove the curse of Jeconias, but also remove the curse of Adam, because
Yeah.
God's the father.
Right.
Blood comes from the father, from what I've read.
Yep.
So therefore, God killed two birds with one stone, if you will,
Yeah.
and took care of that whole mess.
Yeah. Yeah. Real easily. Just a virgin birth. That's all we needed. We'll take care of all that. All right, very good. With that, we have to conclude today.